Hello and welcome to this special conversation. As a multi-sports coach who specialises in working with women to achieve their ambitions, I'm always interested to hear about the challenges people set themselves and how they test their resilience. So I was very intrigued to hear about our guests today. The Wavebreakers are Bobby, Hyla, Hattie and Catherine, a team of 4 women from Vodafone who are taking on the extraordinary challenge of rowing 3,000 miles across the Atlantic in December of this year to raise money for and awareness of climate change. The challenges they face will be numerous, but today we're going to be looking at how they will handle their energy levels and sleep management, or should I say sleep deprivation, in this epic adventure, which is likely to take around 7 weeks. So speaking to them today is Dr Nerina. Nerina is a professional physiologist, sleep and energy expert and author. Her work is dedicated to helping people and organisations to thrive, sleep more deeply and live more joyfully. She believes sleep problems are not simply about sleep, but rather about how we deal with life and its inevitable challenges. So it's very fitting that we've invited her along today to impart some of that knowledge and advice to the Wavebreakers team ahead of their challenge. I'm going to hand over to the Wavebreakers and Dr Nerina now to continue this conversation. None of this is scripted, so let's go with the flow, excuse the pun. And if we can start with the Wavebreakers giving an introduction to themselves, what the challenge entails, and then Nerina can give an introduction and give her approach. Over to you.
Well, thanks so much, Denise, and really great to be here talking to Dr. Nerina. So we'll just start by introducing ourselves. My name's Bobby Mellor, and I'm 1/4 of this amazing team and also the skipper of the crew. Over to you, Hyla.
Yeah, my name's Hyla Coggins. Again, another member of the team, prominently looking after the performance side of the journey and campaign, and also the logistics.
Hi, I'm Hattie Carter, and yes, another member of the team. And I'm the 4th. I'm Catherine Antrobus, and I'm responsible for the nav.
So, as Lisa said, we are the Wavebreakers. We'll be rowing 3,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean this December, which we're very excited about, but also nervous about in many ways. And I think sleep is one of those key topics for us. When we all signed up to do this, I think that was one of the common questions that we all had. How on earth do you sleep on a very small ocean rowing boat in a very big and very volatile ocean? So we're absolutely thrilled to have Dr. Nerina with us today to hopefully answer lots of our questions and also give us some really practical advice about how we can tackle sleep, which is one of the most critical elements to perform, not only in sporting events, but I think just as a human in everyday life. So Dr. Nerina, perhaps you could introduce yourself and all the fantastic things that you do.
Thank you, Bobby, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all today, and what an amazing event. So I'm absolutely delighted and hope I can offer something that will be of help to you. So I am a physiologist, and I have spent the last 25 years helping people to sleep. So I started out in an academic environment, studying sleep and the brain, and then I ended up in health screening in a clinic in the city, in the Square Mile, working with city professionals. And that was when I discovered that I had a kind of obsession for helping people to sleep. And maybe it's because, and it was back in the 90s, so I'm showing my age now, maybe it's because at the time I had huge problems sleeping myself. As a baby, all the way through to my 30s, I had the issues sleeping. Long story short, I discovered that I had a knack for solving sleep problems and wrote some books, ended up working in psychiatry for 10 years, the Capio Nightingale Clinic, consulted with various organisations, sports environments, Chelsea Football Club, notably. Also, I was thinking about this event and my work with sustained operations, people working shifts, people working in critical risk environments. I remember once working with a well-known oil company with their lorry drivers who are driving through the night with lorries carrying oil, and I was doing a lot of work with them on sustained operations and the ability to maintain cognitive performance so that they didn't have accidents, So I'm fascinated by helping people to sleep and maintain balance, and hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about not just the physiology and some of my professional insights, but some really practical stuff today as well to get you sleeping and feeling more rested during your voyage. Can I just apologize right now, though? I might sound a little sniffy and snotty because I'm recovering from my first ever bout of COVID. So I'm sort of a week and a half into it, and I've been certainly managing my sleep and recovery to optimize my healing process. But if I sound a little bit nasal from time to time, it's because I've got this awful lurgy. Getting over it.
Oh, well, thanks so much for coming and talking with us, despite the fact that you're down with COVID, and also well done for making it to March 2023 without having COVID. That's quite impressive.
Yeah.
Clearly.
This is all the amazing flips that I get.
Great. So perhaps we could just give a bit of an overview of what sleep looks like or doesn't look like on this challenge, and then each of us could come to you with some questions about the areas that we're most worried about. So sleep will be a real challenge for us. I'll be fascinated to hear whether you think we're going to sleep more or less than a 90s banker in the city. That could be a good baseline based on your experience. But one of the really important elements of the ocean row is that the boat is always moving. So that means that we can't all stop rowing and have a nice long sleep. Now there's three rowing seats on the boat, but two will be used at one time in most instances. So we will always have two people rowing, and whilst those two are rowing, there'll be two people resting. And we'll do that in 2-hour shift patterns. So we call this 2 hours on, 2 hours rowing, 2 hours off. And the off hours will be used for sleeping, but they'll also be used to do all of the kind of boat admin. Believe it or not, there's quite a lot of admin to do when you're out in the middle of the ocean. And that, also includes feeding ourselves, all of our nutrition, cooking, technical support, so making sure that everything actually works on the boat, doing any sort of filming or communications, navigation. There's quite a lot to do. So even though we'll technically have 12 hours free per day each, we won't be able to use all of that time for sleeping. And in terms of what that 2 hours looks like, we will never sleep for 2 hours, let's say, because you might finish rowing, eat something, deal with your kit, and then get into your cabin. And so you've probably got an hour left to actually sleep before your next shift starts. Where will we sleep? Well, we have two very small cabins, one either end of the boat. I'd say you can just about lie down in both of them. They're not particularly comfortable places. We'll probably have a thin kind of foam mat and a sleeping bag. And they also get extremely hot. So it's about 40 degrees inside the cabins during the day. We're not able to have any ventilation into those cabins for safety reasons. It's very, very important that no water can ever get into the cabins. So we won't be able to have a nice breeze coming through the door or anything like that. We will be hunkered down in there with the door shut. So that's what sleep kind of looks like for us on this row, obviously coupled then with the exhaustion of rowing for 12 hours a day, everything that the ocean will throw at us in terms of salt sores and the physical side of the row, and then eating quite strange foods that we're probably not really used to. Everything we'll be taking is sort of freeze dried. So maybe before we each go through our kind of different concerns, what are your initial reactions to that kind of sleep pattern, Dr. Nerina?
Well, I mean, this is a major undertaking. This is something that, well, full respect to you all. Well done. There's a reason why nature has designed us to spend a third of our lives sleeping. There's an intelligence in that design. There's a reason. And, even though the 90s bankers, and still actually in the corporate world, there's a lot of what we call sleep arrogance, and people feeling that they don't need to get sleep and they can take slices off their sleep. And I've watched this escalate, and this is why the sleep industry globally is worth billions of pounds, billions of dollars. But the fact is, we need to get good sleep, and a third of our life sleeping. So you're not going to be getting that kind of sleep at all while you're on this trip. But also the human beings are amazingly resilient and resourceful, and your project really reminds me of Ellen MacArthur's Vendée Globe. I don't know if you've heard about Ellen MacArthur when she sailed the Vendée Globe, and she sailed solo and set a world record. I think that was in 2005, the Vendée Globe. I have to try and remember the statistics now, because I remember quoting this from my first book, Tired But Wired, where she sailed, I think the race took her 72 days, a bit longer than you're planning, 72 days. During that time, she had 380 odd naps, and her longest period of rest was 36 minutes during that time. That's brutal. That's brutal. And she wore something called an actigraph. So she wore sort of a watch thing, which was down, it was collecting data, and it was downloaded and sent through to the sleep chronobiology unit in Boston. And she was working with a scientist called Dr. Claudio Stampi, and he was monitoring all of her statistics during that time. And hey, she was able to maintain a level of performance, cognitive performance as well. She set a world record during that time. I mean, if you ever watch footage of the race, she got very deranged, I'd have to say. That's the only way of putting it. She'd be very emotional, she'd be in tears at the end of it. She really needed to recover. But I just wanted to cite that example, because human beings can be amazingly resilient. We can be. But obviously you have to do the training for it, which you're now going to be doing before December. There's also another piece of physiology which up front I want to throw into the mix. And when I heard the 2-hour shifts, I got a little bit of excitement, because I'm a bit geeky like that as a physiologist. So you've heard of the circadian rhythm, haven't you? I'm sure, which is the 24-hour clock. So we expend energy and then we recover energy when we sleep at night. This is following, a normal daily cycle. So 24-hour clock. And within this 24-hour clock, though, we have a shorter cycle. This is the kind of hum of your energy, the wiggle of your energy. And it's about a 90 to 120 minute cycle, the ultradian rhythm. So that means that roughly every hour and a half to 2 hours, we need to do something unrelated to the previous task, and we need to seek recovery of some sort. And I've done a TED talk on this. It's called Come to Work and Rest, where I'm begging corporate employees to take breaks every hour and a half to 2 hours and do something for a few minutes to move, eat, breathe, recover energy in some way. But this is going to be relevant for your endeavor, because every 2 hours you have an opportunity to recover energy. And I hear that you won't be able to use the full 2 hours, but what we can do in the conversation today is to talk about how to optimize your recovery. And I actually want to urge you all to start thinking more in terms of recovery and rest rather than hardcore sleep. So as I have been doing for the last week and a half, I've been thinking a lot about recovery and strong resting. So you really want to use those moments, those 120 minutes. Yes, you've got to get stuff done, but you want to optimize recovery with strong resting during that time. And let's talk about how you might be able to do that.
Amazing, thank you. And I think that's something that we've all learned also more broadly. We're doing a lot of physical training at the moment, and I certainly went into it just really focusing on how hard can I train when we're on the ergs and in the gym, but actually how hard can you rest and recover is just as important to kind of rebuild afterwards. So we'll definitely take that away. Perhaps we can just go through the team, and maybe Catherine, you could start. What are the things that you really want to address sleep-wise that you're kind of most worried about and need like some advice?
So I think for me, I'm generally a very happy, positive person, and so I've had 3 children, and obviously sleep deprivation plays a big part with that. The first 2 after the first 2 births, I actually suffered with PND, with postnatal depression, and obviously sleep deprivation probably played a part in that as well in some way. And so I didn't after the 3rd one. I kind of got used to what it was like by then. But so I think for me, my biggest concern is being able to sort of stay positive and happy and still be me as much as I can be. during that situation, I guess. I'm still, obviously with 3 I'm still used to not having a beautiful single night's sleep. It's interrupted multiple times every night still. So I'm okay with that. It's just about remaining happy and positive for me, because I want to feel that, and I want to be able to support others feeling that too. So that's kind of my take on it.
That's a really, really good point. And I have to say, you've been an excellent training as a mum of 3. Well done. I take my hat off to you. I think what I really want to emphasize is, as Denise said at the beginning when she was introducing the session, she said that the way we sleep, and my philosophy is the way we sleep is a reflection of how we live our lives, and the way we manage ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And the thing is, I want you to really think about being realistic. And in fact, there's the term realistic optimism, which you may have heard of this, not Daniel Goleman, Martin Seligman's book on realistic optimism, his book of the same name, which is that there is a kind of toxic positivity that we can get ourselves into if we go around expecting ourselves to always be happy and positive. And I think you've got to accept, and I talked about Ellen MacArthur looking a bit deranged, and I hope she won't mind me saying that, but there were times when she was very emotional, and you've got to allow those emotions. Emotions have weight to them. And if you're feeling afraid and hopeless and pissed off and angry with each other and frustrated and ashamed of how you performed and worried about letting people down, fearful of whether you're going to make it, you've got to allow space for those emotions. But you're a team of 4. Your energies are going to be so connected. I don't want to sound too esoteric, but you will, and you'll be bouncing off each other, and your moods will affect everybody else's moods as well. So it's finding a balance between trying to maintain positive spirit so that everybody else is carried along with that, and so that you can sleep well, because if you go to bed feeling really grumpy and awful, you might not be able to rest, but there's a balance between being positive and actually stuffing down those feelings. So you've got to give space to them and allow each other to have moments where you feel really pissed off and you need to have a cry. You need to be a little bit dramatic about things, and everyone's different. Some of us express more. Some of us are naturally drama queens, and some of us are naturally put a smile on our face and say, I'm absolutely fine. So know yourself well enough. Get to know each other's emotional psychology, your type. And, you might be like, oh, gosh, Hyla's normally really positive and happy, and she's been like this for a while. Is she really okay? Maybe we need to sit her down. I'm sorry, I'm not picking on you, Hyla, but, do we need to say, are you really okay today? Do you want to talk about it? And give each other the space to be honest, to have these realistic moments of offloading, knowing that it's normal and it's important that you do that. And then you can pick yourself up again, having offloaded or had a bit of a cry or a rant, and find your balance again. So I have to say, so it's not about staying positive. It's about allowing, forgive the pun, the ups and downs and the waves, because that's how our emotions work in waves.
Yeah. Totally.
That's easy.
So I think I'm going in with that sort of maybe expectation, but low expectation. I'm going to get quite seasick, because I typically over the years I've suffered with seasickness quite a lot. When I was younger, I used to have the pressure pads, used to have lots of seasickness tablets. So it's a big concern of mine, and it's something that I think everyone gets hit with at some point. Some people might be really seasick in their life and then not be hit with it at all, but I'm a little bit worried about how I will sleep and recover and rest if that happens. So I heard from some teams the years that's just gone, I think there was one guy who had seasickness for 10 days. So how in those moments when you're feeling really, I struggle to sleep when I feel sick, as I'm sure a lot of people do, how we can try and help our body to rest and recover when we're feeling like that, and hopefully pass it by as quickly as possible. I don't know if you've got any advice for that.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who suffered from seasickness myself and travel sickness and all, I mean, I can think myself into a state of nausea if I want to, but So I'm going to try and keep this really practical, I think you will be getting a lot of input on nutrition, but as you probably know, blood sugar control is really important for managing nausea and seasickness and travel sickness. So, really pay attention to your eating and eating little and often to maintain blood sugar. And I don't want to say too much about this because I know you'll have a whole input on nutrition, hopefully. But where I would love to get practical about this is to talk about breathing. And I don't know how much work you're doing on breathing.
Just
doing it.
Not despised.
Just trying.
None at all at the moment. I'll be ergo after 2 hours.
Okay, so what I would really love to do is something on breathing right now, if that's okay. Should we do that? Should we get really practical on this? Because this is not just for managing sickness and nausea, but this is also for optimizing your recovery. So you've done your rowing, you come back into your cabin, you've done your admin, and you've got however much time to optimize breathing, to optimize your rest. So you really breathing, the way you breathe is going to have a real impact on your ability to rest. But from now, you want to go into training with your breathing, and it might be that we can have another session one day on breathing. But from now, just to introduce a few principles, I'm not talking about Wim Hof breathing, and I have trained with Wim Hof. I've done Wim Hof workshops. I've done extreme holotropic breathing. I do ice, swimming in a river and cold and all that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is a way of breathing to optimize performance and recovery, which is based on, have you heard of Patrick McKeown's work or James Nestor's book on breathing? Patrick McKeown, the book is called The Oxygen Advantage. Have you heard of this at all? Okay, so maybe this is...
Is someone wrote a book, which I have to say, I was one of those people that I didn't read the book, but then I listened to a podcast about it, and it was about mouth taping whilst you're asleep.
Yeah.
I think that might have been one of those.
Yeah, exactly.
I tried it. I quite liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some mouth tapes in my bedside cabinet upstairs. If we just, I could spend the rest of this session just talking about breathing, but we don't have the time. So what I'm going to recommend right now as we're talking, I want you to try this. The more you breathe from your nose, the more efficiently you're going to be breathing. The more your lung efficiency is going to improve. And when you come off your rowing shift, I mean, ideally, you would be training so that from now, you can exercise with your mouth closed and breathe through your nose, even when you're exerting yourself, So I've been doing a lot of nose breathing training for months now. So even when I climb, I try and keep my breathing through my nose. Now, this is a whole other way of training. And I don't want to interfere with your training and how you breathe when you're rowing. But certainly for recovery, from now, you want to start getting into the whole philosophy of predominantly breathing through your nose, keeping your mouth closed.
Sorry? Go on, yeah. I was going to say, you're probably coming on to it, but so how is it more efficient? Why is it more efficient through your nose than your mouth?
So this is all to do with the size of your lungs and the construction, the design of your lungs, the structure of your lungs, and the fact that we have a certain amount of dead space at the top of the lungs. And when you're breathing predominantly from your mouth, you're using a lot of dead space. A lot of your lung capacity is being lost because you're using a lot of dead space. So the dead space is the volume of your lungs that's not available for exchanging oxygen with your blood. So it's effectively dead space. Now, when you breathe from your mouth, you're using a lot of dead space. When you breathe from your nose, you're going straight into the lungs. Additionally, when you breathe through your nose, you have a whole filtration system in there, and you produce a chemical called nitric oxide. And what nitric oxide does is it helps to increase the permeability of the lung capillaries and the membranes in the nose. So you absorb more oxygen when you breathe through your nose.
Interesting.
The anti-inflammatory effect as well of breathing through the nose. So, you're warding off illnesses. And when you breathe through your nose, you are also activating a part of the nervous system called the parasympathetic, as opposed to if you breathe through your mouth, you see I'm activating the top of my lungs, which is predominantly my sympathetic nervous system. So going through the COVID recovery, I've been breathing a lot I've been doing a lot of breathing training to activate my parasympathetic, which is responsible for healing, and it's rest and digest and repair. So to accelerate my healing, I've been predominantly breathing through my nose. Now, because I'm talking to you at the moment, I'm actually feeling quite dizzy and lightheaded because I haven't talked this much. I haven't been breathing through my mouth as much as I've done during this session because I'm talking so much. So my brain is going, what the hell's going on? You're not getting enough oxygen to your lungs. So after this session, I'm going to keep my mouth closed. I'm going to go for a walk with my dog and really focus on breathing through my nose. So for the purposes of this session and the limited time that we have right now, right here, right now, what I want you to do is when you're not talking, keep your mouth closed, breathe through your nose, and try and think of the acronym LSD. So I'm not talking about taking a hallucinogenic drug to optimize your performance.
Not another tip.
No. LSD is keep it light, keep it slow, keep it deep. And maybe we can do a part 2 on this, but the light is you shouldn't be able to hear your breathing. Your tongue should be on the roof of your mouth. So if you try this right now, mouth closed, tongue, roof of the mouth, tongue is soft. Now, maybe like me, you've noticed that by putting your tongue on the roof of your mouth and softening your tongue and not being able to hear your breathing, you're starting to find your breathing is dropped into your belly a bit more. Maybe you will do. For me, it happens instantly because I'm very well trained with my breathing. The second thing is slow. So you want to get the cadence of your breathing right. And the other thing is deep. So not just using diaphragm, but using the ribs as well. So it's quite technical, and we can come back to this another time if you want to. I'd love to work with you more on that. But the relevance to seasickness and nausea is that I certainly remember in those days when I'd get very travel sick, and my daughter still gets very travel sick. I know when she's got sickness coming on because she'll start yawning. And the yawning is a sign that blood oxygen is dropping. I can see you nodding, so you can relate to this. So what you really want to do is a lot of breathing training, because if you're starting to notice the urge to yawn, that means you want to really work on mouth closed, breathing through the nose, dropping the breathing slowly, gently, deeply into the belly. And that will help to manage also the acute symptoms of feeling nauseous. But even if you're not getting seasick, when you come off your shift, your rowing shift, you're down in your cabin, you've done your XYZ, lie on your bunk, put one hand on your chest, put one on your belly, keep your mouth closed, breathing gently, shouldn't be able to hear it, through your nose, and think in terms of rest. Don't think, right, now I've got to sleep for 37.3 minutes. Take the focus off sleeping. Try not to be looking at the time during that rest period. And just focus on resting with your eyes closed. Now, even with my eyes closed right now, and I'm talking to you, if my brain was wired up to an EEG machine, you would start to find that my level of consciousness is changing because I have my eyes closed. So even though I feel as if I'm fully alert in beta wave mode, I can start to feel already I'm dropping down in consciousness because my eyes are closed. So you might come off your shift and lie on the bunk and think, I'm really active right now. My brain's going at 100 miles an hour and I'm processing X, Y, and Z just by virtue of having your eyes closed, breathing through the nose, mouth is closed, focusing on belly breathing, one hand on belly, one hand on chest, breathing light. You shouldn't be able to hear it. You will be going into a state of rest. Yeah. So this is a really powerful technique to start working on from now until December. If you wanted to get more technical, we could start doing things like measuring Bolt score, doing some breath hold training and stuff like. Maybe we'll go there one day. But even this will start to make a difference. And even if you look at Patrick McEwen's work, and I can pass these resources on to Denise, and you look at his interviews with people like Rangan Chatterjee, look at some of his YouTube clips, you'll learn a lot about how you can breathe, not just to manage seasickness, but to optimize recovery as well. Sorry, that was a really long-winded answer to your question.
Very helpful.
Yeah. I feel quite relaxed.
Yeah.
There was one thing you said that I just wonder if you could pick up on before we want to highlight, which was when you do go to have your sleep, trying not to focus on the fact that you've got a limited amount of time. You know, I've only got 37 minutes, and you know, that's something I think everyone's had, like when you can't sleep and you lie in bed and I go, okay, well, now it's 2 a.m. So if I fall asleep now, then I'll get 4.5 hours sleep. And you get into this like mental spiral. And I wonder if you have any tips as to, you know, we will have these limited and very defined moments when we can sleep. How do you take the pressure off yourself
Yeah.
to actually get to sleep?
Excellent. So again, taking the pressure off is really important, and not focusing too much on getting to sleep. And I want you to understand that we can think we're awake when we're actually asleep. So it is possible for you to be lying on your bunk just minutes after dropping onto your bunk, and you're lying there thinking, I am wide awake right now. And you could be in something called a hypnagogic trance with your eyes closed, thinking you're wide awake, but actually you're more asleep than you think you are. So I really, really want you to start trusting that and getting familiar with understanding that sleep is a dropping down in consciousness, you know, from fully alert, beta waves. So right now, if you measure my brainwave activity, it's about beta waves. I mean, predominance of beta waves, fully alert. When I started closing my eyes just now, even when I was talking to you, I could feel I was starting to drop into alpha, because I meditate regularly. I know what that feels like. I was getting very relaxed. And then even more relaxed is going into theta. The alpha theta is the dream states, light sleep. Theta delta is your deep sleep. Delta is deep sleep. So delta sleep and REM sleep, it's going to be compromised for these however many weeks, 7 weeks or so. It's going to be. But don't make it worse for yourself by getting worried about how many minutes of sleep. Don't check the time. So presumably you'll use some sort of timekeeping device, some sort of alarm. Okay. And then you close your eyes. Can I teach you a little technique, a progressive muscle relaxation? Now we can do this in a minute or so.
Definitely.
We okay with this?
Yeah.
To do this now?
Yeah.
So you're lying there, and you know your head is filled with all sorts of things, you know, images of the waves, the movement, the argument you just had with Bobby, the disgusting food you've had to eat, the missing people from home. I mean, the brain is like a mad monkey and it's going at 100 miles an hour. Okay, but you want to optimize your rest during this time. So you've remembered what that crazy physiologist lady recovering from COVID said, and you know, you've got your mouth zipped, you're breathing through your nose, you've got one hand on your belly, you've got one hand on your chest. Now let's just do this all together. We're going to do a little meditation, progressive muscle relaxation. So imagine you're lying there, and I'm going to say some words, and I want you to repeat them to yourself silently, as if you're putting one of your little ones to sleep. Okay, so you're going to say this to yourself, okay, silently, not out loud. I love my left foot. I love my left big toe. I love all the toes of my left foot. I love the top of my left foot. I love the bottom of my left foot. I love my left ankle. I love my left shin. I love my left calf muscles. Okay, if you open your eyes now, so you literally, sorry, my dog's pacing up and down right now, so you can hear the tick, tick, tick. So you literally bore yourself to sleep. You can start on your right foot if you prefer. I don't know, I always start on the left, but basically you start moving up your body. Now it's quite boring, so you're going to put yourself to sleep when you do it. Lose the gist of where you were. And if you start doing something nonsensical, like going from left ankle to your nose, go right back to the start and start again. And you use it, repeated cycles of progressive relaxation, starting from your feet, working your way up. You should end up, well, ideally you'd be asleep before you get to the top of your head, and then you move down the body, but just keep repeating it. If you like, just keep repeating it. So there's lots of little techniques that you can use, and that's one that's really, really powerful. and it helps to settle the nervous system, helps to activate parasympathetic. But you could even close your eyes and think about, okay, what went really well in that last shift? What am I really grateful for right now? You know, so you're thinking optimistic thoughts or grateful thoughts can help to settle the nervous system as well. But I love that muscle relaxation technique. It's a really powerful way and very simple as well.
Yeah, lovely, thank you. Hyla, should we move on to you? What are you feeling and thinking about sleep? Yeah.
Two things for me. One of them more on the practical side. How long would it take to adjust to this routine and the impact on our digestive system and also routine as well, and then also the hormonal side of it as well. So I don't know if you want to kick off on what's the adjustment period, what does that look like, what would it feel like, how long will that take, will we just automatically go into it? And when
you know, it's a really difficult, thanks for that one, Hyla. Easy one at the end. It's very difficult to predict how long it's going to take because everybody is different. Everyone's physiology is different, and we all have different degrees of elasticity, and it depends on how old you are, and we don't necessarily have to go into the age side of things, but the more well-trained you are beforehand, and the fitter you go into this event, the more adaptable you're going to be, and the mindset is going to play a huge part of this as well, you know. And the more you tell yourself, the more we create inflexible beliefs for ourselves. I absolutely can only function if I have 8 hours of sleep. I always get really bad jet lag. I can't sleep when the clocks change. These are all things that I get asked, by the way. There's going to be a clock change. Dr. Nerina, can you comment on the clock? And I was just like, geez, it's 1 hour, you know. So human beings are far more resilient than we give ourselves credit for, and I'm a great believer in this. And you know, I've just got back from South America, you know, a week and a half ago, and everyone's like, oh my god, the jet lag, it was to be terrible, and you know, you're going to be feeling that, and it's going to be the COVID, and it's like, oh god, you know, if I really believe that this is I'm going to get really bad jet lag, and that's what's caused the COVID, you know, what we believe is what we end up. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And you need to go into this with eyes open. Realistically, it's not going to be easy. You know, your physiology is going to go, you know, but the more well-trained you are and the more you're able to control the controllable and looking after your nutrition.
I like that one.
Yeah. Do the things that you can do. You know, look after your nutrition. Pay attention to your breathing. Pay attention to your hydration. Pay attention to your rest. And allow yourself to be excited about this event and the opportunity to explore the limits of your human potential without feeling restricted by, oh, my physiology is meant to behave like this, and this is how old I am, and I'm going through this hormonal thing at the moment, and I go through that. You know, history is peppered with stories, and we're constantly reading of stories of people who are testing the limits of their physiology, and you know, the menopausal years as well. I mean, this is a whole other subject, and I certainly can relate to that myself, being in that life stage myself. But what we can't do is underestimate the power of the mind and the human spirit. You know, and while your physical form and your 70-odd trillion cells will take a hit, don't underestimate the power of your mind and your spirit to take you through difficult times and to be an enormous and significant source of resilience.
Yeah, definitely.
God, I didn't know that I was going to say that, but
It's such a positive way to look at it as well, instead of just thinking about how hard it's going to be. Like,
yeah, I mean, look, I've never done what you're going to do. I've never done what you're going to do, but I have done some crazy things in my time, including an Ironman, including, You know, I would do things pre-pandemic, things like Hong Kong and back in 3 days, running leadership programs in the middle of it, leave on a Tuesday, land on a Wednesday, deliver on a Wednesday, travel back on the Thursday, deliver in the city on a Friday. I loved pushing myself at those sorts of limits. That's why I loved doing all the sporting events that I used to do. That's why I love doing the things that I do at my age. I think a human physiology is an amazing subject, and we're constantly learning about testing our limits. And you guys are going to get an opportunity, you ladies are going to get an opportunity, an amazing opportunity to test. And your energy comes not just from physical, you know, your sleep, your nutrition, your hydration, the way you breathe, all of that. That's the foundations of your energy and your fitness. But you've also got your emotional energy, your mental energy, and your spiritual energy. And if you think about spiritual energy being the energy at the top of the pyramid, which is like, why am I doing this? What is my sense of purpose? What is the why behind this? And why you're doing this event? Climate change, amazing, you know. So that, I think, will be an enormous source of endurance when the energy levels are going a bit like this.
Yeah,
you know?
It's interesting. Something that a lot of ocean rowers say is, when you're out on the ocean, the only thing that you get to choose is your attitude, because everything else is decided for you. You have no control over the weather. You don't really have control over, you know, whether your boat's cooperating that day. Your food is already packed when you leave the Canary Islands. You know, the only thing that you can actually proactively control and choose is your own emotions and your attitude. So choose a positive one every time. I think that's something that we're really kind of trying to always be the best versions of ourselves is a really important sort of ethos for us as a team.
Yeah, until the times where you do need to have a bit of a sob every now and then.
Oh yeah,
There'll be plenty of
obviously, yeah, we say this now, but like there'll be full on meltdowns.
Yeah, I mean, I've become, as I've got older, a really good crier, and I now know that roughly, if I need to have a massive cry, it's going to take me about 7.5 minutes, and then I'm done. I've even got a particular chair that I sit on, where I have a good old cry. I'm a great believer in doing it. Do not, fake it, or don't always fake it. There's definitely a case for sometimes fake it until you make it, but don't hold on to stuff. If you're feeling shy, maybe you might need to kind of let go of some of that stuff so that you can feel great. You know,
I love a cry.
Yeah.
We'll have a sobbing chair.
I don't have the chair. I think that's quite good.
Oh, the admin.
Yes.
Admin seat. That's part of admin now.
We see someone's shoulders going.
and you know, don't lose your sense of humor as well. You know, when we laugh, when we're naturally joyful and we're happy, when we're making each other laugh, this has such an impact on your physiology. So, you know, really try and hold on to that sense of humor, and I think that will carry you all through as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're sort of, as a team, we don't have ambitions about getting a world record or anything like that. I think there are some teams that do, and I'm so impressed by them in a different way, but they're very serious. And I think for us, kind of just making it is a huge achievement, making it to the other side safely. You know, rowing an ocean is massive, and then being able to do that with a sense of humour and enjoying it is just really important for us.
I think our social media is a testament to our
our
approach.
Yes.
Absolutely. And having that sense of humor is going to carry a long way. I think, who is it that said pain is inevitable, suffering is optional?
Yes.
I actually think it was probably Lance Armstrong who said that, so we probably shouldn't quote him. But I think it's based on a Buddhist saying, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And if you can learn how to ditch our bricks and ditch those harder feelings when they come up, so that we, you know, even though it's uncomfortable, we can access those positive states of mind that are going to be so necessary for your event, then I think you're really well on track.
Perfect. Well, I have just one last question from my side, which is, so I'm the skipper in the crew, which means that if we do get into difficulty and there are real risks around what we're doing, you know, it's quite a dangerous endeavour. I'll have to be making decisions about those and what course of action we take. And something that I'm reflecting on a lot is the fact that my assumption is that you have kind of, I guess, judgment impairment when you're very sleep deprived. And, you know, what should I expect in terms of being in a position where I have to make quite high stakes decisions, but could be extremely sleep deprived. Is there anything that I could do to mitigate that, or do you think that just kind of comes with the territory of doing something like this?
Well, some of it comes with the territory, but what you can do again, and sorry to be repetitive, but is manage that recovery. And when I'm saying recovery, I'm talking about hydration, I'm talking about food, all of that. So when you rest, strong resting, so the brain the way we process information is there's something called the working memory. And the working memory, if you think of it as a sort of reservoir in the frontal lobe that takes information in on a moment by moment basis. So that will determine your ability to concentrate and focus. But what happens over the course of time at that ultradian cycle is that the working memory becomes more and more filled up, and it becomes saturated, and you can't take any more information in. And in the office environment, the way people experience that subjectively is that they'll think, oh, I'm getting really tired now, I need another cup of coffee. And this is why I talk about, come to work and rest. Build recovery, intermittent recovery into your day. Don't work in a relentlessly linear fashion, go, 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 go all day, and then try and recover energy. So this is relevant for you in maintaining cognitive performance as well during the event. It's that when you're off and you've come off for your rest, take that rest. And, you might feel like your brain is really twitchy from all the information you were taking in during your shift, but really use that time to close your eyes. Don't be multitasking. Don't be dealing with other bits of information. If you've got obviously admin to do your admin, but then when you're resting, close your eyes, close your mouth, breathe through your nose, optimize that rest. And what will happen is that when you rest, you empty the working memory, so that when you come back to your task, you have renewed concentration and focus. So you've increased your capacity to process information again. You increased your cognitive performance, but you've really got to be taking the rest wherever you can.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
And then my last question is a very specific one. So the biggest reason that I can't sleep often is because my feet are cold. And I've tested this theory with a few people, and I don't think it's just me. So I wonder is there something in that?
Yes, definitely.
If my feet are cold, and so what's going on there, and anything that I could do on the boat to try and address that one?
Yeah, actually, this made me think about something else as well. But ideally, in order to sleep well and to switch on the circadian timer in the brain, which is a part of the brain that regulates the sleep-wake cycle, in order to switch that on, there needs to be a critical temperature difference between your extremities and your core temperature. So, for example, when you walk into your bedroom in the evening, the bedroom should be, and it's different for everyone, but it should be cool and well ventilated, ideally something between 16 to 19 centigrade, depending on who you are. And so you should walk in and go, oh, it's a bit cool in here. Now, like you, I'm similar. If my feet are really cold, I find it very, very difficult to fall asleep. So often I'll have a small hot water bottle or something to warm my feet up. So there is something in that, if your feet are too cold, it's going to be harder for you to rest. So I don't know whether you can manage that by having a tiny, you can get those little miniature hot water bottles, or you can just put that on your feet, or those little heat patches that you use when you're skiing or something like that. But ideally you want to be able to manage those extremities, or rubbing your feet together, massaging your feet before you get into bed. The other thing I was going to say is, because you talked about those cabins getting really stuffy and hot, and I wondered whether you could, if there are some oils you can take with you, something like eucalyptus and peppermint oils with you, or even forehead sticks, menthol forehead sticks. I personally, whenever I travel long haul, I always have my Olbas oil with me and a forehead stick. And you put the oil there, and it just artificially cooling down the forehead, stimulating those receptors on the skin, fools the brain into thinking that you're cooler than you actually are, and it helps to switch on the rest cycle. So it's something that I use. I have a forehead stick. It's actually called Forehead. I'm not on commission to them, by the way, on this product, but I should be. But during the night, if I wake up during the night, particularly if you're going through hormonal changes and heat flushes and things like that, you reach for your little forehead stick, put that a little bit of that on your forehead, and that helps me to drop back into sleep because it artificially creates a feeling of being cooler than I actually am.
Just on that, so sometimes when I suffer from migraines, I get those forehead strips, like the gel pads. Is that the same theory then?
It's the same theory. It's the same theory, but the forehead sticks, and I know because I have a daughter who has suffered chronically from migraines for the last 10 years. So we're constantly looking at remedies for her. And I just listened to the Huberman podcast, you know, Professor Huberman from Stanford University who did a 2.5 hour podcast on headaches and migraines. And there's actually in clinical trials, a combination of peppermint oil and eucalyptus oil can help to cool the brain down, can help with headaches and migraines, but can also help with sleep. And I've been saying this for years as well. So I know you'll be limited by what you can take on board with you. But if you had a choice, I'd be more inclined to go for the forehead sticks rather than the strips, which they don't last very long. I know from experience they don't last long. But the forehead sticks, you know, I think I've had my forehead stick. Bear in mind, I'm using it several times in the night. I've had it for months. You know, so it's really worth taking some of those on board with you.
Yeah,
I mean, I would even say, but you probably can't, but a little portable fan that you can charge on a USB stick and have that pointing at your face, so that even though your body is really hot because you're in 40 centigrade, if you've got that pointing at your forehead with a forehead stick and the menthol on your forehead, it's more likely to help you to get to sleep.
Okay,
nice. And the oils have the added benefit of refreshing our cabin.
Smell-wise.
Probably
going to get a bit stinky in there. So when you finish your sleep shift or before, you want to get your Albus oil, spray it around. Make sure that you all test it from now until December. Test these techniques. Test the eucalyptus oils, Albus oil, and the forehead sticks. And make sure you've really got used to having it, and you've got used to having a fan on your forehead. You don't want to be trying that for the first time when you start your trip in December.
Oh, this is amazing story. I feel like I'm butting in, but this conversation could have gone on all afternoon. It's fascinating. And I'm sure hopefully you've picked up some great gems there from Nerina, who has given me lots of advice along the way as well with different challenges. I'd recommend definitely a couple of things you spoke about as well. The breath work thing is something we probably should pick up on again. Breath, the book by James Nestor, and The Oxygen Advantage by Patrick McKeown, they're both amazing and something I'm experimenting with myself at the moment around the breath work. And the Huberman Lab podcast, I don't know if you listened to that one, but that is a mine, like a gold mine of information. They are long, they're about 2.5 hours long quite often, but he has some great guests and he has great content. It's quite sciencey in bits, but he's really good at explaining them. I think, Nerina, you're a bit of a fan as well, aren't you, of Huberman?
Yeah, I like his stuff. I mean, he's not everything. He doesn't cover everything I'm discovering, but he covers a lot of the research, you know.
Definitely. Great. Well, thank you. And Nerina, huge thanks to you. I know you can maybe go and do some strong resting now to get over your COVID.
I'm going to go for a walk because the sun is shining and my dog keeps coming and looking at me and I just want to get out in the sunshine. I feel absolutely great for doing this. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Denise, for asking me, and Hyla, because I have to say, I think you've positively influenced my recovery. I really missed work. So I've absolutely loved doing this.
Oh, amazing.
Oh, you're in the right job there. Thank you so much to you both. I really, really appreciate it. And we just have so many practical tips to go with, but also I think we'll feel really energized, and so thank you.
Fantastic. And I will be great if we can follow up and maybe look at some of those other subjects we spoke about, like nutrition and breath work. So watch this space. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.